Okay, so welcome, and it's great to have a conversation with you today about 208. And in a little bit, we're going to learn about what 208. Why is that such an incredibly important number in today's leadership world? So we're going to talk about lean forward leadership, but the way that I'm going to demonstrate it is through a really iconic photo. I don't think there's too many people who haven't seen this photo and the actual occurrence that happened. But what really is important about US Airways Flight 1539 is the story of leadership that you could possibly pull out of this entire 208 seconds that took place. 208 seconds. That was the number of seconds that Sully, Captain Sully, who was steering that aircraft that day, had to be able to land and allow 155 souls to walk away. So why on earth would that be called a leadership lesson? And the question is quite interesting in that there's a lot of things that Sully and his team did that was more about leadership than it was about simply the technical knowledge of what to do to be able to land that aircraft. And that's really what I want to take you through today. One of the most important learning points for me personally, about Mr. Sully was that he was able to, in 208 seconds, he operated in such a way that he had 1 foot in the present and 1 foot in the future. He had to take in the data, he had to take in his background, his knowledge, what was happening in his environment right then and there, but he also had to then forecast it out very rapidly to how all this would come together and how it would play out. And that playing out was the difference between, dramatically, life or death for 155 people. So as I go through this, you may be able to start to see what elements of this are 1 foot in the present and 1 foot in the future. So let's just really quickly recap what actually transpired. At 3:15, that aircraft, an A320, pushed away from the gate and headed to the runway. And it had 2 engines that were absolutely fully functioning, no problem at all. At 3:24, it was on runway 4. It had 7,000 feet of runway to go through, and it was almost fully loaded, so 150,000 pounds in weight. Its takeoff speed was 170 miles per hour. There was nothing wrong with that aircraft. Technically, absolutely shipshape. And the people on that plane absolutely settled in for their flight to go from LaGuardia to Charlotte. At 3:26, they were already up in the air. They were headed for 15,000 feet. They had 10 miles of perfect visibility. Their speed was 230 miles per hour. And Mr. Sully said one thing, and he said, "Wow, what a view of the Hudson today." It was a brilliant, picture-perfect view from where he sat. And then it happened. At 3:27 and 3,000 feet in the air, above the Bronx, with 250 miles per hour of speed, a flock of Canada geese was liquefied through the 2 engines that they hit. Absolutely sucked into both engines in midair. What happened then was that both engines failed. And Mr. Sully had to go into a mode of figuring out very rapidly what he had to do. He spent 35 seconds doing that. 35 seconds to determine what really was going to be the difference between having everybody walk off that aircraft absolutely fine or not. And so he then started to speak with air traffic control, and their call sign was Cactus 1549. He simply told them that they hit birds and that they've lost thrust in both engines. And at that point, he thought he was going back to LaGuardia. He thought the best thing to do with this aircraft was get back to where he started. Then he discovered he's not going to make it. And this is only 3:27. At 3:27, he realized he's not going to be able to get back to LaGuardia. And so then the conversation took place between air traffic control and Sully. Just a few sentences here and there, a few comments here and there. And then suddenly, Sully announced, we can't do it. We can't go to any of the places that you've proposed. So he was working with air traffic control, but really what was happening, he was discovering he was not going to be able to do whatever it was that air traffic control was suggesting. And so then he had to say, we're going to go into the Hudson. Even air traffic control was surprised. You're what? We're going to dip it into the Hudson. He made that decision there and then. The only announcement that he made on that aircraft was right before impact, when he said, brace for impact. And then the flight attendants kicked in. The flight attendants started to say, brace, brace, heads down, stay down. And they repeated that until that aircraft hit the water. They did not stop. They just kept going, bracing everybody ready for impact into the Hudson. 150 miles per hour, unpowered, and ditched into the Hudson. 3.5 minutes after takeoff. 208 seconds. And one of the few successful ditchings in aviation history. Only done 4 times. So coming out of that story is really a great lesson in lean forward leadership. This is about 1 foot in the present, 1 foot in the future, and knowing how to get between the two, how to bridge the gap. And so we really took a look at this and said, what can we learn? What are the things that we can really learn of what transpired in such an emergency when a leader like that has to make critical decisions that have a critical impact, not just on a business, but on actual lives, the souls of 155 people. And there's probably about 7 major points that anyone, whether they're an absolutely tenured leader or whether they're just starting out in their careers, can learn from this exercise. And one of the very first ones is you need to know your stuff. Gone are the days of being a generalist. Gone are the days of being able to get by where the team around you has all of the answers or has all of the technical knowledge. You need to know your stuff as well. And so one of the things that Sully did, he had all the data available to him. He had his dashboard. The cockpit is his dashboard. It's his management dashboard. It's how the business is running, or it's how his flight is going. But he also had access to other and had ways to interface with other people. He had air traffic control. And above and beyond that, he likely has a whole host of other opportunities. But at that particular moment, there was just his dashboard and air traffic control to make decisions. So he had to know where to look on that dashboard to be able to draw the right conclusions at the right time, to be able to make the right decision in real time. He doesn't have time to consult elsewhere. He's got to make that decision. So knowing your stuff today as a leader becomes absolutely a table stake. It's a ground rule of business. You've got to also be able to enable your people. What's interesting about this whole scenario is that those flight attendants knew exactly what to do. There was no dilly-dallying about, there was no what should we do or I've not been trained for this. There was just get into action. And even with silence coming from Sully, he only made one announcement. Those flight attendants knew what to do, and that's because there's a machine working behind them. There's a system and process. There's scenario planning. There's people building people up. And that team knew how to act in that circumstance. And that's important. Enabling people to be able to really hit the ground running when the going gets tough. And then you take that thought forward and you say, okay, in the world of the past, it was okay to supervise. It was okay to check up on people. Not so today. Knowledge workers, smart people, millennials who want to just get on with it. It's really all about checking in, not checking up. And checking in as a leader is about looking for how you can help your people become great, how you can enable them to do great work, how you can actually get them to be more successful, because your job is to remove the barriers that prevent them from being successful. That's checking in. It's not checking up. And then if you carry that thought a little bit further as well, and you look at where Sully was, that's a lot of chaos. That's a lot of things coming at somebody all at once. And what he has to do is wrestle it. And in today's world, that's what it is. Multiple things, multiple sets of data, big data, everything coming at you, people issues, the customer, the processes, things breaking, things being great, things not being great. It's all coming at you, and you have to wrestle that chaos. And wrestling that chaos for us is really all about being comfortable with ambiguity. I know what I'm doing, but this is really an unusual circumstance. I know how to fly a plane, but boy, I'm not so sure I know how to fly a plane that just liquefied a flock of geese. That's being comfortable with ambiguity. That's being able to really think on your feet and wrestle that chaos. In today's world, really being that comfortable in those circumstances is, again, a table stake. That's the skill that people need to really be able to develop. And the skill around problem solving and decision making becomes even more critical. Yes, it's great to have all the technology in the world and all that information coming at you, but what do you do with it? Decision making and problem solving, big skills to develop in today's world. And then, of course, there's accountability. Own your actions. Absolutely owning your actions and the result. You make a decision, you see it through, and it's your decision and you own it. So it becomes even more critical. Can you imagine in the air, Sully? He has to own his actions. He has to know what result he's going for and own that result. And then, of course, there's be in the moment. In today's world, it's really that huge distraction that is coming at you every day. And it's a real challenge to keep people in the moment, to keep them in real time, knowing what's going on and being interested. So keeping in the moment becomes even more key today, to not allow that distraction to distract you from what's important, what's critical. 1 foot in the present, 1 foot in the future. That's what we talk about when we talk about lean forward leadership. It's really about managing a business for today as well as for tomorrow, making sure that you're looking for that result that you want tomorrow, but also the actions that you take today to enable you to get there. Connecting all the dots.